Many women after 50 start noticing something they didn't expect. More hair on the pillow, more strands in the brush. At first, it feels normal, but over time, it doesn't stop. Doctors often see this pattern in women after 50, and here's what surprises most people. It's not just hormones. It can be triggered by something as simple as the nuts you eat every day. In fact, nearly 40–50% of women over 50 experience hair thinning, often linked to nutrient imbalances and inflammation. And the worst part, it often happens while you're eating what you believe is healthy. Today, you'll discover the 4 worst nuts to avoid and the 4 best ones that actually support hair growth. Before we dive in, I'd love to hear from you. Have you noticed more hair in your brush, on your pillow, or in the shower? Let me know below, because what you're about to see might completely change what you snack on daily. Best nut 4, almonds. Now let's start with one of the most recommended options, almonds. Simple, familiar, and easy to include in your daily routine. But what makes them powerful for hair isn't just that they're healthy, it's what they provide at a deeper level. Almonds are rich in biotin, a nutrient closely linked to hair growth. Biotin supports the cells that produce keratin, the protein your hair is made of. And after 50, this process naturally slows down, which is why many women notice their hair becoming thinner or more fragile over time. Studies have shown that low biotin levels are associated with increased hair shedding and weaker strands. So supporting this pathway becomes important. But that's only part of the benefit. Almonds are also high in vitamin E. This acts like a protective layer for your scalp, helping reduce oxidative stress, a process that can weaken hair follicles over time. In simple terms, it helps create a better environment for your hair to grow, and that's what many people miss. Hair health isn't just about growth, it's about protection. Because when your scalp is supported, your hair has a better chance of staying strong. Another advantage is consistency. Almonds are easy to include daily. A small handful, around 15 to 20 almonds, is often enough to provide benefits without overdoing it. You can add them to breakfast, mix them into meals, or simply eat them as a snack. Over time, many women notice less breakage, stronger strands, and hair that feels more resilient, not overnight, but gradually. Because your body responds to what you do consistently. But while almonds support the structure of your hair, the next nut works on something just as important, the environment your hair grows in. Best nut 3, walnuts. Now we move to something that works in a completely different way, walnuts. They don't just support your hair directly, they support the environment around it. Walnuts are one of the few nuts rich in omega-3 fatty acids, and these play an important role in calming internal stress within the body. Because as we age, low-level inflammation tends to increase, not something you always feel, but something that affects how your body functions, including your scalp. When the scalp environment isn't balanced, hair follicles don't perform as well. Growth slows down, strands become weaker, and over time, this becomes visible. Omega-3s help support a more stable internal environment, which allows your body to function more efficiently, including the processes involved in hair growth. There's also another benefit many people overlook. Walnuts contain copper, a mineral that helps maintain the structure and strength of your hair. While it won't prevent natural changes like graying, it helps keep your hair from becoming brittle and weak. And that matters, because sometimes the goal isn't just to grow more hair, it's to keep the hair you have strong and intact. Walnuts are also easy to incorporate. A small portion a few times a week is enough. You can add them to meals, mix them into yogurt, or eat them on their own. And over time, many women notice their hair feels healthier, less fragile, and easier to manage. Because when the environment improves, everything else starts to follow. But for many women, the real issue goes even deeper, and the next nut targets something inside your body that directly controls your hair growth cycle. BES nut 2, Brazil nuts. Now we move to something most people don't immediately connect to hair, your thyroid. It's a small gland in your neck, but it plays a major role in how your body functions, including your hair growth cycle. And here's where Brazil nuts come in. Brazil nuts are one of the richest natural sources of selenium. This is a mineral your thyroid depends on to function properly. In fact, just 1 to 2 Brazil nuts can provide your daily selenium needs. Now here's why this matters. When your thyroid slows down, which becomes more common after 50, your body starts to change in subtle ways. Energy drops, metabolism slows, and hair growth begins to weaken. Many women notice more shedding, duller hair, slower regrowth, but don't always connect it to thyroid function. Research has shown that low selenium levels can affect how efficiently the thyroid works, and when that system is supported, your body begins to function more smoothly, including your hair cycle. Hair doesn't just grow randomly, it follows phases: growth, rest, and shedding, and your thyroid helps regulate that rhythm. When it's off balance, that cycle becomes disrupted, which can lead to increased hair fall. Brazil nuts offer a simple way to support this from within. But here's something important. More is not better. Because selenium is powerful, eating too many Brazil nuts can actually create the opposite effect. So the key is consistency in small amounts. 1 or 2 per day is enough. And over time, many women notice something encouraging. The shedding begins to slow down, which is often the first sign that things are improving. Because before hair grows stronger, it usually stops falling as much. But even with thyroid support, there's still one missing piece. And this final nut targets the very structure of your hair itself. BES Nut 1, cashews. Now we come to the one that brings everything together. Cashews. In the right amount. Cashews are rich in zinc, and this is one of the most important minerals for hair health. Zinc plays a direct role in how your hair grows, repairs, and maintains its structure. When levels are low, hair follicles struggle to function properly, and this can lead to thinning that feels hard to explain. Studies have linked zinc deficiency to hair loss, especially the type that spreads evenly across the scalp, which is something many women experience after 50. But here's what makes this tricky. Zinc deficiency doesn't always show obvious signs. You might feel slightly tired. Maybe your skin feels different. Nothing that clearly points to hair. But internally, your follicles are affected. Cashews provide a natural way to support this. A small serving, around a quarter cup, can help contribute to your daily needs. They also contain other minerals like iron and magnesium, which support overall balance, and this combination matters. Because your body doesn't work in isolation, everything is connected. When your system is supported properly, your hair responds. Many women who include cashews in moderation notice stronger strands, less breakage, and hair that feels fuller over time. Because sometimes, it's not about growing more hair. It's about keeping the hair you have stronger and healthier. And that alone can make a visible difference. But here's where things start to shift. It's not just about choosing the right nuts anymore. It's about knowing which ones may be working against you. Because some nuts don't just fall short. They can quietly create problems over time. Now, let's look at the ones you may want to avoid. Worst nut 4, peanuts. Let's start with one of the most common choices, peanuts. They're affordable, convenient, and often seen as a healthy snack. But here's what most women don't realize. Peanuts are more prone than many other foods to contamination with something called aflatoxin. In simple terms, it's a toxin your body has to work hard to process. And while safety standards reduce the risk, small amounts can still be present, especially in regularly consumed products. Now here's where this becomes important. Your liver plays a key role in balancing hormones and processing nutrients, both essential for healthy hair. But when your body is constantly dealing with toxins, that system can become less efficient over time. Some studies suggest long-term exposure to aflatoxins may impact liver function gradually. And when that happens, your body doesn't regulate things the same way. Hormones can shift, nutrient processing slows down. And over time, that can show up in ways you don't expect, including changes in your hair. But that's not the only issue. Peanuts are also one of the most common food sensitivities. Even mild, unnoticed reactions can create internal stress in the body. Not something you always feel directly, but something that affects how your body functions. And when your system is under that kind of pressure, your hair follicles don't get the support they need. The real concern isn't occasional intake, it's repetition. Peanut butter every morning. Peanuts as a daily snack. Over time, that exposure builds. So it's not about completely avoiding peanuts, it's about awareness. Because something that feels harmless can quietly influence your body in ways you don't immediately notice. But if toxins are one side of the problem, the next nut shows how something much more familiar, sugar, can disrupt your hair from the inside out. Worst nut 3, sugary pecans. Now here's one that catches many women off guard. Pecans. On their own, they're not the problem. The issue is how they're usually consumed. Most people don't eat plain pecans. They eat them in desserts, candied, sweetened, or baked into pastries. And that changes everything because the added sugar is where the real issue begins. When you consume high amounts of sugar, your blood sugar rises quickly. In response, your body releases insulin. Over time, repeated spikes can lead to insulin resistance, a condition that becomes increasingly common after 50. Now here's how this connects to your hair. Insulin resistance affects hormone balance. Specifically, it can increase the activity of certain hormones that impact hair follicles, and when that happens, hair follicles can shrink. which leads to thinner, weaker strands, especially around the crown and hairline. This pattern is something doctors often observe in women after menopause, and many don't realize that diet plays a role. There's also the inflammation factor. High sugar intake has been linked to increased inflammatory markers in the body, and as we've already discussed, inflammation creates a poor environment for hair growth. So even if you're eating something that contains nutrients, the overall effect may still work against you. And here's the tricky part. This doesn't usually happen overnight. It builds gradually. For example, enjoying sweets during holidays or regularly adding sugary snacks into your routine can quietly influence your body over time. So it's not about avoiding pecans completely. It's about how they're prepared. Plain, unsweetened pecans in small amounts are very different from the sugar-loaded versions most people consume. But the next nut is where things get even more confusing, because it's actually considered healthy, yet can still create problems if you're not careful. Worst nut 2, excess cashews. Now here's where things get a little confusing, because this next nut is actually considered healthy. Cashews. And in the right amount, they can support your body. But when eaten too often or in large quantities, they can start to create a different problem. Here's why. Cashews contain something called phytic acid. Now, that might sound technical, but the idea is simple. Phytic acid combines to important minerals in your digestive system. In simple terms, it can block your body from properly absorbing nutrients like zinc, iron, and calcium, and those are exactly the nutrients your hair depends on. Zinc supports hair growth. Iron supports oxygen delivery to the scalp. Without enough of these, hair follicles don't function at their best. Now here's what makes this tricky. You might be eating cashews thinking you're doing something good for your hair, but if you're eating them in excess, your body may not actually be getting the benefits. Some nutrition studies have shown that diets high in phytic acid can reduce mineral absorption over time, especially when combined with other plant-based foods rich in similar compounds. And this becomes more important after 50, because your body is already less efficient at absorbing nutrients. So even a small imbalance can have a bigger impact. And for many women, this shows up as something subtle. Hair that feels weaker, more breakage than usual, slower growth over time, not dramatic, but noticeable. The key here isn't to avoid cashews, it's to understand balance. A small portion can be beneficial, but turning it into a daily, large quantity habit can work against you. And if that sounds surprising, the next one is even more unexpected, because it's often seen as one of the healthiest options, yet can quietly create the wrong conditions for your hair. Worst nut 1, macadamia. Now we come to the one that surprises almost everyone. Macadamia nuts. They're often seen as one of the healthiest choices, rich, smooth, and full of good fats. And that's true, but the problem here isn't what they contain, it's how easily they're overconsumed. Macadamia nuts are extremely calorie-dense, with over 700 calories per 100 grams, which means even a small handful can quickly turn into more than your body needs. And that's where things start to shift. After 50, your body becomes more sensitive to how it manages energy and hormones. So when fat intake becomes too high, even from healthy foods, it can affect how your body functions over time, not in an obvious way, but gradually. Because your system relies on balance, and when that balance is off, your body doesn't respond the same way. That includes how nutrients are used, how energy is regulated, and how your hair grows. For many women, this shows up subtly. Hair doesn't feel as full, growth feels slower, shedding becomes more noticeable. And it's easy to miss the connection, because nothing feels wrong in the moment. Another thing that makes this tricky is how easy they are to eat. They're light, satisfying, and don't feel heavy, so portions often go unchecked. A few turns into a handful turns into a habit, and over time, that pattern builds. So again, the goal isn't to avoid macadamia nuts, it's to keep them in balance, because even good foods can work against you when they become too much. Now, when you step back and look at all of this, one thing becomes clear. It's not about avoiding everything, and it's not about finding one perfect solution. It's about small, consistent choices. One thing many women overlook is portion and frequency. Even the best nuts only help when eaten in the right amount. Another simple shift is variety. Rotating different nuts gives your body a wider range of nutrients without overload. And something even more important is consistency. Because your hair doesn't respond to what you do once. It responds to what you do repeatedly. And over time, those small patterns shape visible results. So here's a simple question to think about. Which one of these nuts will you change in your daily routine starting today? We're building a community here to support your strong, healthy comeback. If this helped you, I'd truly appreciate a like and if you subscribe. Also share it with someone you love. And join me in the next video for another simple step toward better health.